I brought Paleozoics to locals yesterday because I wanted to try the new cards from the Infinite Forbidden that they gave the deck. And I was, first of all, very happy that we had over 20 people at locals yesterday on a Tuesday night. It's been continuously growing, which is really cool to see. Which also meant, though, we played 5 rounds of Swiss. So we were out there for a long time. We started at 6:30. We played until after 11. It wasn't my fault, though. Even though I played Paleo, I only went to time once. It was not my fault. I just want to say that. As you can see on the screen, I did go undefeated. I beat 2 Salamangreats, which I was actually kind of surprised that I was able to do that because that matchup is hard. The way I beat the Salamangreats was against one of them, I went first. So I stopped them from setting up the rage. And versus the other one, I was lucky that in one of the games, they didn't open combo when they went first. Then I beat Manadium. In that matchup, it was a blessing that Baron was banned because they went first, but they didn't make the craziest board. So I was able to just set 5 and vibe. I beat Magispector, which was actually kind of annoying because all of their stuff is untargetable. And obviously the only Paleozoic I opened in the matchup was Canadia. But I still was able to pull through because the good thing about the Magispector matchup is even though you let them full combo every time, they have a whole lot of monster removal and monster negates, but they can't really deal with back row very well. So that was cool. And then in the last round, I beat Ubel. Quick word from one of the sponsors of the channel. These locals reports are always sponsored by Holon Card Shop. Check out their link in the description down below. You can use Josh5 for 5% off. They are the premier shop for OCG sleeves, all kinds of other TCG accessories. Thank you to Holon Card Shop for sponsoring this video, as well as obviously check out all the other amazing sponsors of the channel in the description down below. Without further ado, let's get into the locals report and hope you guys enjoy the video. Let's get into the interesting part right away because the backjack, I mean, parts of this list have been out here for a while, so there's nothing crazy to talk about when it comes to backjack. But here's a thing that I played because I really wanted to try it, and that was 3 copies of Magic Colloidal Sol. Whenever you bring back a Paleo, you can summon this card from your hand or graveyard, and then it makes it a lot harder for your opponent to run over your stuff because when they go into the battle phase, you can simply exceed with your stuff. Theoretically, you could go into something like a Herald of the Arclight. I didn't play any synchros for it, but in your opponent's battle phase, you can make a Toad, you can make an Animalocaris, you can make an Opabinia, depending on what you want to do. It never gets banished because you always exceed with it. Basically, every turn you get another extra body that even lets you do stuff on your opponent's battle phase to make it harder for them to out your things. I decided to also still play the Soldier Dragons. I decided to cut down on 1 Laundry Dragon Maid, and I played this card, which is another card that is also from the Infinite Forbidden, and it feels like it is also custom-made support for the Soldier Dragon version of this deck because it is a level 2 dragon. So Soldier Dragon is able to special summon it from the deck, and this thing has 2 different effects that are both really synergistic with the Paleozoic deck. So first of all, its monster effect when it's on the field is when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can move it from your monster zone into your pendulum zone to bounce the attacking monster. And then when it's in the pendulum zone, it has the effect of if a monster is special summoned by your trap effect, you can target a card on the field, return it to the hand, and then you can special summon it out. So basically the intended way to use this card is just for it to jump in and out between pendulum zone and monster zone and keep interrupting your opponent a little bit. It was in some ways better than I expected, and in other ways it was worse than I expected. But first and foremost, it was really fun to play with because it's like this really annoying tool that you just keep doing annoying stuff with throughout the course of the game, which is really the name of the game when you're playing the Paleozoic deck, right? It's like you're just trying to do a lot of really annoying things for a lot of turns in a row, stalling out the game and getting your card advantage that way. And this card kind of plays well into that thing. I just think it's really funny that this one is an Aqua for Toad and this one is a Dragon for Soldier Dragons. The reason why I'm saying this card was both better and worse than I anticipated, this card was worse than I expected when I summoned it off of Soldier Dragon, right? Because what happened was you summon a Soldier Dragon, you summon a couple of other Soldier Dragons, whatever, and then you bring out the statue at the end of it. But then because this only interacts with your opponent in the battle phase, very often you don't actually get to use it. And the most common thing that happened is my opponent didn't get to attack this simply because I had to use something like a Karma Cannon beforehand. This would be face down, right? I never used the effect on attack declaration because I stopped my opponents in other ways usually. When it really surprised me was when I drew it, because this scale effect up here says you can target a card on the field, return it to the hand, and then you can special summon this card. So when I drew this card, I just scaled it. Whenever I summoned the Paleo once per turn, I would use it as a bounce, and I would sometimes decide to just leave it in the scale because you don't have to. And then every single turn, whenever I summoned the Paleo, it was just a bounce. And eventually I would decide, okay, now I need the extender. Like on my next turn, I would go like bring back Paleo, bounce another card, bring it out, and then make Opabinia with it. Obviously, it requires other cards to work. You know, you have to be able to bring back Paleos to get your bounce. But it was pretty cool because I just got an extra bounce every single turn. So when I drew this card, it was actually quite cool. When you summon it off Soldier Dragons, it's a lot easier for your opponent to play around it. Simply don't attack. It's a lot of monsters for this deck, and it's 11 in 60 cards, so it's still not the end of the world. Sometimes I drew a little bit too many monsters, but it's fine. I feel like the heart and soul of this deck at this point is Morganite. I can't see myself cutting this card anytime soon from this deck. If I was able to make my opponent unable to kill me for 1 or 2 turns, this is the card that would drive it home. And surprisingly, I actually used the double normal summon regularly because I have a higher monster count. I made turn 1 Toad for the first time since Ronin Toadin was banned. I haven't made turn 1 Toad in so long, but one hand was able to do it because I went Morganite, summon 2 Souls. It's a 3-card combo. One thing you have to be careful of when you play this card is that Magic Colloidal Soul, you can't summon it from the hand anymore if you use Morganite because you can't activate effects in hand anymore. Usually it's not a problem because you have an extra normal summon, so even if you draw like Soul and another monster, you can just normal summon the Soul, but then your opponent knows it's there and you can't surprise him. Like, I feel like this is the effect to summon itself from hand can be really nice. If your opponent goes to battle phase, you surprise them with Soul from the hand and then exceed in the battle phase. It's a small price to pay for the extra draw every turn with Morganite. I also decided to play 3 copies of Trap Tantalizing Tune. I know this card is really weak to Ash Blossom, but there are a few reasons why I still wanted to play it. First of all, you can use Soldier Dragon to kind of insulate it from Ash. Like if you summon Soldier Dragon and then Trap Tantalizing Tune, if they Ash it, you at least get another body. But like setting up traps in the graveyard, especially the ones that you don't want in your hand, like Transaction Rollback, is just too important. I feel like it fixes a lot of your hands. I like it. As well as 1 Card of the Mice, which I only activated once, but I feel like whenever you activate this card in this deck, you're winning the game, so why not play it? So this is the spell lineup. I've been playing this deck for a relatively long time now, so I know what to expect from a lot of the cards in the deck. This spell lineup just has been doing well for me. And the rest is, as usual, the trap cards. It's a 60 card deck, by the way. No particular reason. It's just to fit all the things you want to fit in this deck. It just happens to be 60 cards. Paleos, 15. As always, nothing crazy. And then obviously heart and soul of this deck, the transaction rollback things you can do with this deck are crazy, alongside the trap tricks, of course, and the Daruma Karmic Cannon. Whenever I play this deck, it keeps like amazing me how strong of a card Daruma Karmic Cannon is. I also decided to play a card that I haven't played in this deck for a long time, and that's Ice Dragon's Prison. The idea behind this card is that I feel like it's really good against the meta right now. I really like it against the Fiendsmith engine. I also really like it against Yubel in general. I like it against Tenpai. It's solid against Snake Eye because you can either choose Pyro or Fiend. If you don't have access to a Paleo, or your opponent chain blocks your Paleos, this card also lets you bring out the Soul, because it is a monster that is being special summoned by your trap card, right? So this is the quote-unquote removal package. You got 3 Fiend Griefing, of course. Great card because it interrupts your opponent's graveyard and gives you a backjack. 2 trap activations to bring back 2 Paleos. 3 Needlebug Nest just for setting up. It's always been a good card in this deck, but now you have another great mill in the form of Sol. If you mill this for free, you just get so much incremental value over the next couple of turns. Really nice. And the things that make you stay alive, 3 Vabokus and 3 Rise to Full Heights. Whenever I show this deck, everyone keeps asking why no Threatening Roar over Vaboku. The reason is simple. Vaboku can be used on your own turn, which is really important when you want to pop off sometimes. And Vaboku can also make it so that you can crash your Opabinia or something without taking damage to make a Zeus. The flexibility of always being able to activate Vaboku is very, very important. This was 57 cards, so we have the last 3, which are probably my favorite cards in the deck at this point. I don't know how I ever played this deck without these, but Balance of Judgment, 2 copies so you can trap trick for it. This card is the most dopamine-ass card in this entire deck. The most I've drawn with this card yesterday was 8 cards against Magispector because they just cooked the entire turn. They had a field spell up, 2 scales, 3 set cards, and 5 monsters. So I was just like, all right, balance. This card is nuts. This is the reason why I like using cards like this, like Morganite, even Trap Tantalizing Tune when it gets ashed. These are the kind of cards where you use them early, you take a risk of going negative in card advantage, you let your opponent cook. This is another reason why Karma Cannon is so good in this deck, because it leaves all of your opponent's cards in play. You need to go minus with this deck to establish a board state in which you don't die, right? And then you balance back to a full hand, and that's when you start cooking, because now you have Paleos in the grave, maybe you have Morganite active, so on and so forth, and then you can really run away with the game, right? And then obviously the last card is yeah boy, the Burst. So I really like this deck. I feel like it's been shaping up into a very cool concept. At this point, really, the only thing I would mess around with, the Soldier Dragon package. There's like other great monsters you can play, so let's talk about those for a second. I'm a huge fan of Hyperia in this deck, just because it's so simple, right? Level 2, 3+1 on normal summon. That's all it does, but that's all that the summon needs to do, right? It's just a free body. I like it. Good target for Gigantic Sprite as well. It also doesn't have any sort of engine requirements, right? Like when you play Soldier Dragons, you need to play targets for it. You can run out of targets. Hyperia is always great, right? Doesn't need to do anything. And then, because of the Soul card, I was considering a package of Swap Frogs, Mirror Mage of the Ice Barrier, and Freezing Chains. If you draw a Swap Frog, you can send Mirror Mage to add Freezing Chains to revive the Mirror Mage to make a Toad, and then in your opponent's standby phase, you detach from the Toad to summon another Swap Frog from the deck, and that can send the Magic Colloidal Soul from your deck to the graveyard. It is really, really cool. Two things though. It makes a deck that usually can't get hand trapped. Suddenly, if you open Swap Frog, the Impermanent Veiler for your opponent has real value. The other thing I don't love, obviously drawing Mirror Mage is not great, but drawing this card is even worse. Milling this card is also terrible, and this card is a continuous spell card, which means that it's gonna be stuck on the board basically forever until you get to Zeus or something like that. And that is something that's really annoying because you can only set 4 cards after you do that. You also will always draw 1 less card with balance because this will always count as a card on your field. This is why I decided to not include a package of like 3 swap, 1 Mirror Mage, and 1 Freezing Chains. You can just run swap to dump the soul, but that is not that much different from just normal summoning the soul in the first place, right? If you have any other ideas of how you can make the soul card easily accessible in this deck, let me know, but I think at this point just drawing it or milling it with Laundry or Needlebug Nest was the best that I could think of, because everything else felt like it was making the deck too vulnerable to drawing too weird of a hand and stuff like that. But just wanted to mention that if you want to try this deck and maybe mix it up a little, those are cards that you can do that with. But yeah, that's the main deck, 60 cards. Now the extra deck, we have 2 Opabinias and 2 Animalocaris. This is standard at this point. I would never play less of those. And here's a cool card that I used for the first time in this deck in the TCG, and that's Ninja Shadow Mosquito. So this card, it can't be destroyed by battle and you take no damage, so it does make easy Zeus, but it also there's something really cool you can do with this that most people will not see coming. This card reads very similar to Nightmare Pain. It says, all monsters your opponent controls must attack if able. And then obviously it has this effect when an attack is declared, you can have a card gain a counter, and then on every subsequent attack, you can burn them for the attack points of the monster with the counter. So what you can do with this card, you can exceed into the Shadow Mosquito on your opponent's battle phase where they don't see it coming, right? So if your opponent builds a big board and you have this on the field or in the graveyard or in your hand, and they go into the battle phase and you can bring this out and exceed summon Shadow Mosquito, your opponent's monsters are all forced to attack, and if their stuff is big enough, they will just die. Like a Yubel deck, basically. And you know what's funny? I killed my Yubel opponent in game 2 with Shadow Mosquito. Not on their turn, but on my turn. Because what happened was I won game 1 after like 30 minutes or something, and game 2, because we were close to time, they made Gustav Max, burnt me for 2000, and then put Liebe on top of it. And Liebe is 4000 attack. So when they tried to kill me with Liebe, I used like Vaboku, and then on the next turn, there was like 2 minutes left. So I made Opabinia, used the trap card, brought back a Paleo and Sol, made Shadow Mosquito, and I also had a SP Little Knight, which I also played. This was my board, right? And so I went to the battle phase. They had 2 Yubels and Liebe, right? And so I was like, attack into Spirit of Yubel. Shadow Mosquito, place a counter on Liebe. 0 against 0, nothing happens, right? Then Shadow Mosquito, burn for 4000, and then SP attack, burn for another 4000. You can do some really cool stuff with the Shadow Mosquito. It's become a lot more realistic because this card, if you can set it up, you have more bodies. Then I played 1 Gigantic Sprite. I also made this a couple times. I did it turn 1 once where I opened Morganite, Sol, Laundry, where I just went Morganite, double normal, make gigantic, and gigantic summoned soldier dragons. And then there's one toad. If you're playing swap frogs, you probably want to play 2 toads. Downard, Typhon, and 2 Zeus. This has been pretty standard in this deck for a while. Anima for the backjack, Link off, Cambro Raster, and Sprite Sprint, because Sprite Sprint can send Magic Colloidal Soul to the graveyard. I unfortunately had to cut the Zalantis package. I like those cards, but they had to go for Sprint and Shadow Mosquito, and I didn't miss it. Clearing a board after you use Karma Cannon on it, you either just Zeus or you Elemental Burst, right? It's fine. I don't think you really need those cards. And then the side deck, I only used a very small fraction of my side deck. I decided to play 3 Lava Golems for going second. These were sided in a lot. I usually took out the Soldier Dragons and the targets for it. Only drew it once against Yubel, but it was pretty good against Yubel because I was able to tribute Varudras. I played these, which I never sided in this time around, because like I said, we only went to time once, and that was against Yubel in game number 2, so I also didn't have these in the deck. But in theory, if it gets very close to time, you need something that you can take the rollbacks out for and still have a good target for Morella, so that's what these are for. I played 3 Witch's Strike. These are still here because, first of all, this is another really dopamine-heavy card if you can resolve it. It's here for any sort of Omni-Negate matchups, like Voiceless Voice. I considered siding it in against Salamangreat because they have Salamangreat Rage. And then you have 3 different Dimension Grounds. This card carried hard in a lot of matchups. In the matchups where you would have sided, you actually also really like drawing it, so I decided to just make it 3. I beat Salamangreat with this. I beat Yubel going first with this. Card is pretty nuts. And then there's 2 D-Barriers. My Magispector opponent did not enjoy getting it flipped on him. In the side deck, you can do some pretty degen stuff. That's the Paleo deck, the updated version. I'm happy I was able to win locals. The deck is pretty fun still. I'm gonna keep tinkering with it. I'm gonna keep making updates to it. Let me know what you think of this version, and let me know if you have tried the 2 new cards from the Infinite Forbidden and how they were for you. And in general, I'm always very happy to hear about new ideas for Paleozoic, because for some reason people still keep coming up with new normal trap cards that no one has ever seen before that could be good in Paleozoics, which is always really cool, and I'm always happy to try them out. I hope you enjoyed. If you've been watching this on YouTube, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the video and leave a comment and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.